Welcome to Nite, producing high-impact WebAR campaigns. I heard it was another small event today, so I really appreciate you guys are joining us. I hope you're all healthy and keeping it sane, and I wish us all a better year in 2021. Nite is a monthly meetup organized by AR.org, a nonprofit with a mission to advance AR, to advance humanity. And we do it by bringing together the best of AR with the best of the AR community, and that's you guys. So thanks again for joining. One of the hottest topics in AR this year and last year is WebAR, but many marketers are still confused about how to use it and how to derive value from it. So to explore this question, we have assembled for you today an incredible panel with experts from across the entire ecosystem that relates to WebAR, so we can hear their perspectives and answer your questions. My name is Orion Bar. I'm the founder of AWE and Super Ventures, and I have one question for you. Are you ready to get augmented?
Woo!
Thank you. Thank you for that. So folks, by joining AWE Nites, you actually join a global network of AR professionals that meet in over 20 cities around the world, currently mostly online. You can check out the cities and see if there's something near you or topics that are of interest to you in the link on this page. And we're all missing the good old days where we could meet in person. So we vow to have a big comeback for AWE USA this November in Santa Clara. And I can't wait to see you all, not as holograms, but as real humans in the same room. So start looking at that, if you want to exhibit, speak, attend, everything is open on the website. And since you're now part of this incredible community, let's get social, all right? So our hashtags for today are Nite and WebAR. Let's see if we can make it trend today. And you can also follow us on Twitter for the latest news in AR and VR, as well as check out our YouTube channel, which has the largest collection of videos about AR and VR, over 2,000 of them, including meetups like this one. And if you're interested in getting kind of a weekly digest of the latest in AR, VR, every Friday in your inbox, sign up for our weekly spatial newsletter. It kind of pops up on the website, so really easy to find. We truly have an amazing lineup for you today. The pillar of WebAR, the tech providers, implementers, creators, futurists, and a real customer. But before we start, let's put our hands together for the sponsor for this meetup, Nextech. And Paul, if you want to say a few words about Nextech, give it up. Or Paul.
Thank you, Ori. We love the AWE community. It's wonderful to be a part of it. Nextech, 3-year-old startup. If you can believe it, we booked over $20 million last year, and revenue just keeps scaling. The fact of it is, the world's ready for augmented reality. It's the next new mass medium. It's coming down through the 20s, the decade. I don't want to turn this into a sales pitch on Nextech, but we've got a very specific point of view within the world of AR for e-commerce, AR for experiences, and of course AR for ads, which I'm sure we'll all talk about as we go through today. So thank you, Ori, and appreciate the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Paul, and Nextech. All right, folks. So if by the end of this meetup you'll want more of this kind of information and education, we recently announced a new workshop designed to help brand managers, agencies, and creators, not programmers. So it's not a technical workshop, but it's really helping you to learn how to produce high-impact campaigns. It starts in February and will be led by some super experienced instructors from friends at RPR, Patrick, which we'll talk later today, and also a bunch of guest speakers that we have assembled from across the ecosystem. So it could be a really valuable workshop. Early bird pricing ends this Friday, just saying, but take a look at that. All right, let's get started. So I think by now, most marketers know why AR is good for advertising. And in one word, you could probably say it's about engagement. Engagement with AR goes through the roof. Why WebAR is still a question that people are debating with. And if you think about, what's the appeal of WebAR on top of the engagement, it's the reach. So here's a quiz for you. What was the first ever AR campaign on the iPhone? Anybody knows? If you know, you can post it in the chat. I don't see guesses yet, so let me reveal the answer to you. This is it. It's a campaign to promote the iPhone back in 2009 for Orange Telecom. And how do I know that this was the first campaign on the iPhone? Not just because I created it, but also because at that time, you had to have a jailbroken iPhone to run AR on iPhones. So we actually used the Imagination SDK that later was acquired by Qualcomm and became Vuforia, that we all know and love. But how do you launch a campaign that requires jailbroken phones? Well, we actually shipped 200 physical phones, iPhones, to the media, of course, along with the printed marker, another relic from the old days that was required for any AR experience. But the thing is that, during the pitch for this campaign, as well as any other pitch that we delivered that year and later, agencies were, on one hand, really excited about AR, but on the other hand, really bummed that you actually needed to download an app to experience it. Because, of course, it's a huge friction point for customers. We know that no one will ever download for 90 seconds an app that will be used for just 30 seconds experience. And 10 years later, it's still a huge friction point. So the question of, whether we need WebAR, I think by now is a no-brainer. It's clear that on top of the engagement you get from AR, you also get a much wider reach with much less friction. And the better news is that in the past couple of years, WebAR made significant progress. You can almost do anything in AR on the web. You can take, a piece of art on the website and then go straight into your room and see how that art would look on your living room. You can do AR gifting, from a QR code or from a simple URL. And you can even track complex objects like this wine bottle and have some really interesting interactive experiences. According to Artillery Intelligence, thousands of campaigns now use WebAR. 80% of all activations have session lengths of over 1 minute, and 50% of AR sessions are greater than 2 minutes. And that's an incredible stat for any campaign, especially AR on the web. And according to that same survey, these are the top challenges for using AR in these campaigns. You see, there are still a lot of challenges, but the top two are: one, unable to reach my audience at scale. And that's, of course, instantly solved with WebAR. The second is the ROI is not clear, which is exactly why we're here for this meetup, to educate brands, agencies, and other marketers how to produce high-impact WebAR campaigns. So to address that question and to help you figure this out, once again, we have this incredible lineup. And now it's time to meet our contestants. We really have folks from across the WebAR ecosystem. We have a leading provider of WebAR for e-commerce. We have the president of Nextech, Paul Duffy. Give it up for Paul.
Yeah.
Paul, say a few words about you, the company, and what you do with WebAR.
Oh, for sure. Well, thank you, Ori. So, there's about 250 of us. We began, believe it or not, with a very strong point of view about, essentially taking products, converting them to AR assets. And then, when we studied the market, and we love AR Artillery, I mean, it gave us a lot of great glimpse into where things were shaping back in 2018, 2019. We began to put it into, a number of consumer products. One of them happened to be, if you can believe it, a vacuum cleaner company in San Jose. And within something like 5 days, we had converted more, customers off their product pages, shoppers to customers off their product pages than they were able to do in the prior 4 to 6 weeks. And if you can believe it, we stepped up and acquired that business and then put all of our AR tech into it. And today it's, if you can believe it, probably the largest distributor of melee vacuums in North America. Many of them sold through AR. So we've got a direct line to sight on the customer journey, what it means to take a product, convert it to AR, and then show the conversion to actual hard cash, top line revenue. We kind of, eat, sleep, and breathe AR in the world of e-commerce.
Thank you, Paul. That's awesome. We also have an award-winning implementer of WebAR, which is behind some of the best or major brands campaigns out there. Give it up for CEO and founder of RPR, Patrick Johnson. Patrick.
Yeah, absolutely. So been working in the AR space for about 8 years now, started Rock Paper Reality 3 years ago. And at that time, we were really focused on app-based experiences. You know, we were working with everyone from Universal Studios to the American Heart Association, but it was all kind of on the focus of apps. But then we started to get a lot more interest from big brands looking to deploy augmented reality, but every one of them had the friction point of like, you know, for this one-off experience, we don't want to download an application just to see, you know, something overlaid on top of my Nike shoes. As soon as we saw like 8th Wall announcing and we tested it, and we're like, this is real, this is working, and this can be deployed. We pivoted, and we pivoted really quickly. We got the lead technologist over at Deloitte Digital to join us. And we then created what we like to call the trifecta between the development, the creative, and then the strategy. And the strategy is really the big piece to our success. And it's things like we'll put together a 100-page strategy document just before even getting into the deployment of a experience. So that's really kind of the sweet spot between what we're doing in WebAR and the strategy work that corresponds with it.
Thank you, Patrick. Looking forward to hearing more about some of the projects you worked on. We also have, to get the market perspective in the future, we have the one and only Kathy Hackel. Give it up for Kathy.
Thanks, Ori. I'm excited to be here. I was actually really excited when you asked me to be part of this panel, and most people are like, why is she talking about WebAR? And I think it's exactly what you said, the industry, the overall view, thinking about the future, about the long-term view, I think is really exciting. I am a futurist in my essence and a lot of the work I do. And one of the really interesting things I'm currently working on is a project with the Futures branch of the Air Force that has VR, that has volumetric video. And right now we're working through a potential component that is a WebAR component. So very excited about talking a little bit about that. And then obviously how I see things going in the future. I think that's what you guys are going to get from me is more thoughts on the future and where this is going. I do want to add something really interesting that I help, the word that Paul used, conversion. I think engagement is great, but when it comes to ROI, we need to talk about conversion. And the numbers are already coming out proving that there is great conversion when you use WebAR.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy. We also have a fantastic creator on board that is behind some cool WebAR campaigns. Give it up for Adam Wilson from Polyform.
Hey, thanks, Ori. So I'm Adam. Good to meet everybody from Polyform. I've been working in the AR space for a long time now, was part of the Google Glass Explorers team in like 2012, 2013, doing a lot of, printed markers stuff back then with the NBA and having the mascots pop out of your game ticket and stuff like that. Again, so locked into the app space. Started Polyform about 2 years ago, where our intention is creating, premium AR and, app-based products. So, we look at AR through that conversion lens. For us, it's really important that it's providing utility and not just novelty, where that's kind of like where we play around.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam. And finally, our most important guest on the panel today, a real customer with a testimonial of a brand that delivered a high-impact WebAR campaign. Give it up for Wayne Chang from Saatchi Art. Wayne?
Thank you, Ori. I appreciate it. Wow, the most important speaker. I think I'm the only customer, so I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me. So I'm Wayne Chang. I oversee product at Saatchi Art. We are the largest online art marketplace. We have over 1 million original works from emerging artists all over the world. And as an art commerce company, we're always trying to explore the latest technologies, whether it's artificial intelligence, image recognition, augmented reality. We're always trying to enhance the art viewing and buying experience for our customers. We launched AR in our iOS app a few years back, but as Ori mentioned, like the app fatigue is real, and we needed to reach our larger web audience. And we did see some success with AR on our app. We did see some conversion gains. So the question was, can we port that over to the larger audience on the web and see that same success, right? So we finally partnered with Rock Paper Reality with Patrick here, RPR, last year, and they helped us build and successfully launch our first AR feature. So we're really happy about that. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Wayne. Keep the mic hot. We have a question for you coming up in a second. All right, so we're starting with the panel. We have about 30 minutes for some prepared questions that we have for the panel, but we're here to really answer your questions. So feel free to start putting the questions in the chat. Later on, we may even open it up for video if you actually want to brave that. But we really want to have kind of a conversation. So let's make sure that happens over chat. So starting with kind of the market perspective, the customer's perspective, and that's why my first question is directed at Wayne. We're here to talk about impactful WebAR campaigns. So the question for you is, did you figure out how to produce an impactful WebAR campaign?
So short answer is yes. In terms of the market as a whole, I could speak to the art commerce market. It has been skewing more towards online purchasing, mobile transactions, a younger audience. I'd say, especially with COVID in 2020, that accelerated these trends in a significant way. And so the idea that people can actually have more access to augmented reality, I think the market has ripened for wider AR adoption. There's definitely more room for growth, but we're seeing some very promising signs. For what we do, in the art space, it's a little different. We have some unique challenges that make AR a really natural fit. So there was like this sort of perfect marriage that happened last year. But I would say, given the recent trends that we're seeing, it has been ripening quite a bit for AR, and it is very promising.
Awesome, thank you, Wayne. We'll get back to more details on this. But I want to hear from Kathy a little bit about the market. I mean, how do you see kind of the key players out there, the dynamics between, big guys, small guys, the web itself? Is it really becoming more and more acceptable for the AR experiences that we're after?
Yeah, what I'm starting to see, obviously you've got app AR, which we talked about already. You talked about in the intro, and seems to have been the way that we've been using AR, whether you're going to Snapchat or Facebook or TikTok, which obviously has taken off, but you're doing AR through those apps, right? It hasn't been web-based. And I think that that's where it starts to get exciting when you see, for example, Shopify, they're doing AR quick look, but still it's the fact that they're starting to see a big uptake in companies wanting to use AR, not because it's nice and fancy, but because there's actual conversions. So they saw, I think the number that they shared was a 200% boost in conversions when merchants used AR for product visualization. So those are great numbers. Nothing, any marketer would jump at something like that. I think one of the things that people need to think about when they're starting to look at, web AR is thinking about the strategy and thinking about the user, right? Who are you trying to reach? Like you said, younger, Wayne mentioned younger folks, trying to think, how are they going to come across this AR experience that you're presenting to them, right? So if it's web-based, it can work really well depending on who you're trying to reach. One of the things I try to do when we're looking at the industry as a whole is think through, we tend to be very US focused in some ways, and we think connectivity in the US, we're not thinking connectivity in other parts of the world where the bandwidth might be lower. So, thinking through what is the best way for someone to actually access web AR? Are they going to be able to do it? What type of content do I need to create to reach the bigger audiences, right? Because that's where the ROI is, the more you can scale it. So as far as like the big players, I think that there's a lot of different people investing in these technologies across different spectrums and different verticals, to be honest. I mean, the fact that I'm here working on a project with the futures branch of the Air Force, and they're thinking of doing something, it's not a classified thing or anything, but they're thinking of doing web AR, I think is quite exciting and quite promising when you start to think about reach and conversions. So.
Cool. Thank you. You want to mention any of the kind of the names that you see most kind of delivering WebAR technologies?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I mean, because I do play a lot in volumetric. I'm excited to see all the volumetric activations. Obviously, our friend Tom Emmerich has done amazing work with artists, with all sorts of people when it comes to activating through the web. So definitely, like what they're doing, Trigger, XDR, just a lot of the different companies that are kind of deploying these types of solutions on behalf of brands, right? I tend to really like the work Panera has done, but I believe most of the Panera work has been app-based. I'm not sure if it's WebAR. But yeah, I don't know. I will tell you, like, who am I excited about, or who do I see being maybe a big player that we haven't really tapped into is Adobe. Most people forget about Adobe when they talk about AR. Right now they have Adobe Aero, which is, it is an app. But if you're, they're probably thinking the long game. They're thinking WebAR and how to democratize that and bring that to the masses. So. Awesome.
Thank you for now. So Patrick, you talk with a lot of agencies and marketers, kind of try to encourage them or motivate them to use WebAR. Where do you see the traction? What kind of customers are most kind of interested in this kind of capability so far?
Yeah, so really marketing and advertising are the big ones, and so if you've got a customer facing brand, then in most of these customers are right for WebAR. That said, there's ones that are even a better fit than others, and what we're seeing is industries where you have almost a more of a commodity of your product. Let's call it like Budweiser versus Coors, where can you really tell the difference? Most people can't. So then it's all about your brand, and it's all about the marketing dollars you're putting into it and how you cut through the noise and how do you engage your customers. So a lot of these wine, spirits, food and beverage, fashion, luxury goods, areas where there's high marketing dollars and they can afford the cost of a WebAR experience, are a really good fit. And plus, when there's high competition, we're even seeing a lot of demand from larger gambling companies, even online gambling companies, because there's opportunities now when you send out an email. How do you create loyalty? How do you get people to place that first bet sooner? Well, get them surprised, get them excited, create that positive association with the brand. And why don't you create a WebAR experience that's your invitation for when you actually first engage with that brand? So that said, it's just, we're seeing the companies with the larger marketing budgets that are the ones, at least that we're focusing on. But it's consumer-facing brands in general.
And what kind of WebAR experiences are they leaning towards mostly? I mean, we've seen portals where you can walk into a different world. We've seen product packaging that triggers some experiences. We've seen, doing an experience on a desktop with no specific triggers. You see like any specific types that are more popular than others?
Yeah, the consumer packaged goods is huge. That's what we did with Siduri, the subsidiary of Jackson Family Wines. But what we're looking at as well is once you think again about the cost associated with this, the great thing about WebAR is now this opportunity for your omni-channel strategy, right? And so you create this asset, you put it on your package, and then you spend only 80% of the time or 80% of the cost to optimize it to now be able to advertise it on social. Now you can push it out on your website. All these different activation points along your customer journey now can be WebAR enabled, and you can leverage that single asset that initially when you'd have it just with your app, only your app-based users would be able to engage with it. So a lot of the time we spend with our customers is looking at their customer journey, finding the AR activation points, and then ultimately trying to bring them back to the loyalty section, the shareability, and driving awareness and sales.
Right. Thank you, Patrick. So Paul, you're focused more on product visualization in the context of e-commerce. So more kind of visualizing a product in your home, than like a fully interactive experience, like some of the other things we've seen in the video. So tell us about kind of that process and what kind of customers are more leaning towards that experience.
Sure. Well, to Patrick's point, when we looked into the industry, like looked into the market, basically, the reason we tilted very heavily to creating a tech stack on WebAR was solely because it gave us the broadest aperture of display devices that we could find. And when you study the customer journey, the omni-channel that Patrick refers to, we knuckled it down to the top of the funnel, the middle, MOFU if you want, and then the bottom when they do the conversion. Yeah, are you there? Did I drop?
It was unstable for a second.
I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I was worried. It's like, don't talk so much. So, when we started to look at creating the, WebAR experience, and honestly, when we studied it, we realized that, frankly, the browser is an app, right? It's got a lot of core functionality. It's very ubiquitous. It's on a lot of different devices. And what we didn't want to do was be single threaded to an iOS or an Android type experience on a new device, because it really minimized the aperture of display devices we could hit, right? So we ended up creating a file format around GTLF that allowed us to do very basic pinch, zoom, rotate, placement, product visualization. And then we created a pipeline and a workflow that would allow us to build that such that it's photorealistic, but we could do it at scale. Because, it's and I'm sure, Wayne can attest to this, and Patrick as well. You can do, it's great if you can do it for one or two, but if you got to do hundreds and then potentially thousands, scale becomes an issue. And so, we just got really good at doing that. And ultimately, what we ended up finding, and key to all of this, of course, is the data and the tracking that comes out of this experience, right? Was that the conversions were off the charts. They were typically 4, 5, sometimes 10 times. We'd get 1 or 2% when we A/B test between a product page and, just a static picture with a photo gallery. We'd get basically anywhere from 5 to 10% conversions, add to carts, just using the exact same inbound method, putting it on the page, and then just making sure that there was a button there that the viewer could see as soon as they clicked it. And because it's WebAR, zero friction, maybe you ask permission to use the camera, wait about 3 seconds, and boom, the product's in your room. We don't do the actual, I loved those examples you showed us. Patrick's stuff looks amazing, where it actually wraps. It uses visualization. We did faux try-on, fake try-on, again, because we knew that we'd be limited in the total aperture of devices that we could display against. But it didn't hold us back. People found it sticky. Those data points that you showed earlier, the 2 minutes or more, we see that every day. We've got, a trove of analytics that support that. But to Kathy's point, the conversions, optimizing the conversions on site were key. And so the final thing I'll say here is, once you've built a WebAR asset, what I love about it as our business is that we can put it into an AR ad unit, so we can roll it out through an ad network. We can put it through all the social channels. We can literally bring it into an SMS messaging app, which is incredible because that is a massively ubiquitous market that everybody can access internationally. And you can do it through a bandwidth constraint display environment. So net, if you're a brand and you really want to reach, if you've got the trigger points of AR, if you've got the stickiness, if you've got the conversion, and now you've got mass deployment, it's a great device for you to think about using. Great technique. I'm assuming you're asking me the question, but how do we handle at scale a lot of volume, right?
Yeah,
a lot of objects. Yeah, I mean, it is a choke point in the industry right now. There's everybody looks at it, they study it. We've got 4 different ways we do it. I won't bore you with all of the details, but oftentimes, and this is the good news, specifically for brands, there's almost always some form of 3D object existing in that manufacturer, in that brand's pipeline. So first things first, you pull down that particular extract and then you adapt that for WebAR. And there are a multitude of ways to do that quickly and cost effectively. We went to the point where we actually created an app where you would download, take a video, and then we would create effectively about a 95 to 98% single, no touch 3D AR asset which would then come in and be cleaned up with a couple of human eyeballs and then put through the pipeline. And then frankly, you can go the brute force way where you just get an army of folks and they build, fairly complex models around the products. Of course, that has a cost increment to it. But what you need to do, Ori, is not look at what does it cost. It's more about what will I net from my revenue. I need to be able to step back and say, if I activate this product as an AR asset and I can put it across that aperture or display device, what's my net benefit? What's the return on that? And you can study it because it is a web asset, right? You can see the data points, you can see what's converting, you can actually see what the click-through rates are, and they're all very compelling. And we're one of many within this community, all actively participating in that. When it becomes more evident to the brand managers and they try it, you will find a large degree of them will take a discretionary spend, put it into that approach, and then it'll blow out from there. And that's what we see every day as we go through it with our clients.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul. So now let's switch a little bit to talk about the maturity of WebAR and some of the challenges that we're still facing. And the question is to Patrick. It's commonly known that the web is, of course, a couple of steps behind what you can do in native apps when it comes to AR, to computer vision. So Patrick, walk us through some of the limitations you're seeing and how is it really affecting how you think about the WebAR campaigns that you're producing?
Sure. So I'll use an example just since we've been talking about the Siduri experience. One of the big challenges and one of the potential workarounds for it. And so, that experience was built with volumetric capture. These are large assets. There's a lot of 3D in there. We had file sizes that were over 80 megs. And when you're engaging with that, and you have to have good bandwidth, right? If you're on 3G, you're going to have to wait for it to load to be able to interact with the experience. A lot of people don't have patience for that. So what we had to do, and just as kind of a workaround, is think about the user experience. Like, we know how long it's going to take for that to load. So we actually broke up the UI into multiple panels. So each one is, here's your Wi-Fi, make, holograms like Wi-Fi, connect to your Wi-Fi, make sure your audio's up. Did you know, and the users engaged each one of the steps of the way. And we actually then measured the dwell times and we're testing to see, is there a drop off here? Are we putting too many actual steps here and for the user to get to the experience? And that way we could cut it down if we needed to. So it's really about build, test, see how they're responding through the analytics, and then iterate. So that's obviously one challenge that we're seeing. There's all kinds of, asset, like I'm sure, Paul, that you've had to work through just in creating it's a whole different asset pipeline, and then switching from app-based and then going to web-based. That was a whole challenge in itself, and trying to create that same photorealism and quality is definitely a challenge. And I know I'm not even going to try to get into the technical details and show my cards there, but that is certainly something that we've ran into. So just for the sake of time, I guess I'll leave. Those are two things, but I mean, there's plenty more.
So actually, let's ask Wayne. As a customer, was there anything that you wanted to do in one of your WebAR campaigns and you couldn't because Patrick said, it's only possible in a native app?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Patrick, so RPR, they were able to help us overcome some of the initial challenges. We have over 1 million artworks, and our unique challenges, they're all different one-of-a-kind works. Once it's sold, it's gone. So, and they're all different dimensions, all different images, high-res JPEGs. So how do we generate an AR experience that's compelling and accurate, and do it on the fly, right, and render that? We were able to do that in a pretty crafty way, and just have sort of one 3D model that is sort of resized, and we sort of pass the dimensions and the JPEG file, and we would just apply that up front. So we're able to overcome that. One of the other remaining things that we haven't quite figured out yet, or haven't solved, but we're looking into, is sculptures. It's something we also sell, so 3D objects, and they're all unique and they're all different and original. And so how do we actually achieve 100% product coverage on that. So that's one sort of remaining area that we haven't quite figured out, how to generate AR models for all these unique, tens of thousands of original works.
There's actually a related question in the chat. Iyaz is asking whether the LiDAR that we now see in the iPhone 12 is helping to solve that problem and allows us to quickly scan objects and then deliver it to WebAR experiences. So it's kind of a question to the whole panel, if you think this is really kind of a solution for all, or we're still searching.
I think everybody's probably got an opinion on that.
Go ahead.
I'll jump in. I'll be brief. I think it's close, right? It's a good glimpse into how things will be probably in the next iteration. I would say the next set of phones coming out probably towards end of this year, 2021. What I can tell you is, to Wayne's point, sculptures, for instance, and really, and all of us on the panel know this, it really breaks down to the materials. Shiny glass, very, very difficult to highly automate. When it comes to textiles, organic materials, shirts, etc., very easy to create automation around that pipeline. LiDAR, I think, is going to help with the dimensionality of it, give you a little bit of a running curb start when you pull it into your pipeline. But I do suspect that we will see, coming out of the back end of this year, apps that have been developed specifically for the types of LiDAR on the types of phone. So they won't be ubiquitous to the overall community, but they'll be specialty. And I think you will see some great strides there in what's possible. At least that's my opinion. I'll throw it back to the panel. I'm sure that everybody's been playing with these things.
Like Adam has an opinion here, and let's introduce Adam as our creator here. So, actually, let's use this opportunity to thank all the amazing creators out there, because without them, AR would be so boring. So, thank you, Adam. What's your take?
Thank you. I think Paul nailed it. We're, the tech is coming. It's not quite there yet. There's, I would say at this point, there's photogrammetry stuff that's doing better than the phone LiDAR can. It's on the way. It's nice to see it's like looking through a pinhole into the future of like what we're going to be able to do, but we're not producing any models that way yet. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So Adam, what are the kind of campaigns that you are called into, kind of where they need these skills as opposed to just, visualizing a product?
Yeah, for sure. So at Polyform, we're very committed to producing products. That's kind of our main thing. So we do a lot in the marketing space when it's in concert with a product release. We do a ton of work in retail. So obviously retail is just getting, beat up the last decade, but especially the last few years, and especially last year. So we do a lot of in-store experiences for them. We produce hardware, we produce all types of basically trying to take all the benefits of e-com and bring it into the physical space through all different types of sensors and stuff like that. And now, as people are trying to keep their brick and mortar spaces smaller and the experience there higher, and the amount of stock they're sitting on lower too, we're finding a lot of in-store opportunities for AR. These retailers, especially we work with a ton of people in the apparel business. So, people like Lululemon, Uniqlo, Arc'teryx, and they run into the same problem everybody's describing here, which is the automation of, I've got 1,000 SKUs. How do I get them all into AR in any case, in e-commerce or in store? So we're seeing a lot of people kind of dipping a toe with like a special line of outerwear or something, presenting it as their first thing on the e-com website, doing some cool in-store stuff where we're, being able to change what's on a mannequin, or like minor virtual try on, other things like this, interactive posters and stuff like that. So we're seeing a lot of people in, trying to take what they see on, you know, Shopify, of course, you know, Kathy dropped some really great statistics Shopify have come out with about the AR lift, trying to see like, can we get that same kind of experience replicated in store? And seeing some great success there. So that's a lot of what we've been doing is trying to bring AR into the physical space. Same with working with companies like beverage companies and stuff like this, you know, seeing the cocktails on the table. Of course, glass, so hard to do, as Paul mentioned. But if you can do it right, it looks great, you know, and having that same kind of, you know, IRL conversion lift, you know, do people buy more cocktails if they can see them on the table first? Turns out they can.
So Adam,
yeah.
You have like tips for creators on how to create higher engagement, higher conversion in WebAR experiences?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's really important to focus on the utility that you're bringing to the user. And, you know, I find, you know, just having something, it's the sizzle versus the steak, right? You know, a lot of times, especially with new tech, and I think in a lot of ways, AR is still in that kind of novelty phase before we get to the true utility phase. There's a lot of experiences that are, you know, just kind of shiny objects, right? And that's great. And you do see a lot of lift for them. I think, you know, like when the iPhone came out, there was a long novelty phase before people, you know, wouldn't download novelty apps anymore. I think for AR, that phase is going to be a lot shorter, and people are going to be moving to, you know, what can I get out of this practically? So focusing on experiences where you're providing the user something more than just a shiny object is definitely going to increase the engagement. Whether that's, you know, more information about the product they're looking at, or just a richer experience. That's kind of TBD based on the time, but always be thinking about, you know, the utility you're providing the user, and does this move them forward down the customer journey, or is this just kind of a cool thing to look at and then there's no call to action?
There's actually a cool follow-up question from the chat from Jasper. If there's kind of a way to, through the user experience, to guide the users on how to use, you know, how to interact with the specific experience. Some thoughts on how to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it depending on what kind of experience it is, you want to have your, you know, plane detection markers or whatever markers kind of leading them through. I find with like web AR experiences, especially stuff that we're doing in store for a number of retailers, it can be their first ever AR experience. So they don't know anything about plane detection or rotation or pinch and zoom to make it bigger or smaller. So you really got to hold them by the hand and not be afraid to provide that information, even if it, you know, clutters up the experience or whatever from a designer's point of view. It's really important to give them the step-by-step and explain too, you know, you have to ask for the pins and stuff. As Paul said, you know, sometimes you got to ask for the camera or whatever. So really explaining to them like why we're asking for the camera, and maybe even drop a little bit of information about how AR works. You know, it uses your camera to, you know, get a sense of the space and stuff like this. I think it's, you know, educating the user and not letting people, you know, when new tech comes out, if you're not aware of it, it can seem intimidating to some people. So they're like, oh, AR thing, now I'm in camera mode. Oh, I don't even know what this is. I'm just going to fall out. I'm just going to hit cancel, you know? So you really have to, you know, be easy with them and make sure you're giving them all the instruction and support they need to make their way through the journey and then hopefully buy something at the end of it.
All right, thanks, Adam. All right, now we're moving into kind of the heart of the questions today around how to create impactful campaigns with significant ROI. And I'm going to start with Patrick. You know, that's kind of what your claim to fame is, right? To help convince or to help convince marketers that the campaign that you're producing for them will have high impact and really good return that you can measure. So what are some of the strategy considerations that you're giving as recommendations to brands?
Yeah, so I mean, our first step is really during the discovery period is just ask a ton of questions. And so we bring in all the stakeholders. We really get down to understand the personas of the actual customers they're going after. And we know our AR persona really well, but who is the persona of the customer? What is that? What do they look like? How do they interact with tech? Is it something that's familiar with them? Is it something that's mysterious? And a lot of these questions that we ask around usability are going to dictate how we actually create our user experience, our UI, how many infographics we need to include. So, it's getting really deep into the personas, interviews with the stakeholders. We've got a really good user experience person that kind of creates what she calls the service design, and really starts to understand exactly from beginning to end, the why, how are our customers engaging with it? And is AR the actual right way to do it? Like, we see so many customers just trying to replicate what they can already do on their phone today, just in 2D. And we say, don't bother, like, keep it in 2D. It looks better that way. But if you want to go take it the step further, here's the reasons you want to push it to 3D and into AR. So starting with discovery, gathering the insights, assessing the technology requirements, defining the persona. Those are all big things we do. Then we usually move into the execution. We're exploring the creative possibilities. We're looking at the use cases, doing the 3D whiteboarding story sessions, and then down selecting and coming up with a prioritization, often based on going back to the channel strategy and the customer journey. Because during that time, we can also make choices if we know that if they just want to push it out on a product, we're going to make different decisions likely than if they want to push it across their product and the email and SMS, and they don't have a budget to do it all. Not to mention on their paper flyers, their out-of-home advertising, everything else you can put a QR code on that they want. It comes down to budget, and that gives us the canvas that we're going to be working with. So that's a big part of it. And honestly, we do things where we've got partnerships with companies that will go in and do actually even competitor interviews for the customer. We'll find companies in their space that are deploying AR and do interviews with the agencies that are actually doing it. So we get tons of insights. Like, it's so rich before we even get to the development stage. If the customer has the budget for it, if they've got a concept and they know exactly what they do and they know best, by all means, like, let's get to work. But that's it. And then the last bit is just the validation phase. And this is the part where I think is really important, is just defining the analytics strategy, tracking the performance, supporting the leadership on the socialization. And the last piece I want to say is, a lot of times we get hyper focused on just the AR experience when often if the customer isn't actually being called, that the bottle itself in the safe for like a bottle of wine isn't AR activated, or there aren't like shelf talkers that are calling out like, hey, grab this bottle of wine, it's going to give you something different. No one's going to pick it off the shelf, and you're going to get a flat experience, and people need to know that they're going to be getting something special. Same thing if you're getting your call to action. What does your landing page look like that you're actually getting redirected to from WebAR? Is it going to be in the same vein as their coherence and consistency? Most of the time it isn't. People think they can just throw AR at something and that's a done deal. But if you're going to do it right, it has to be a thread that goes from the first touch point to the actual landing page to the point of sharing it online with your friends. So I know that's a lot, but that's trying to fit it all into one little package.
Like a condensed version of the workshop, 2 days. That's awesome. So let's switch to the customer perspective. Wayne, so what did you wish you knew before you got started with your WebAR campaigns, and what are some of the tips that you would give other brand managers or agencies on how to create more impactful WebAR campaigns?
Yeah, I can't stress enough the importance of testing and really looking at the entire user experience and the journey of that user. I think it's easy to, hit everyone over the head and say, hey, we have WebAR, like do this first, but it also makes sense where to place that touch point and where they trigger that augmented reality and when it makes the most sense. From that point, just constantly testing and iterating and making sure that it fits naturally in that user journey. Within that, the second point is to make it really successful. Having proper tracking is, of course, a given, but really knowing how and sitting and just watching what people do and just user testing and seeing how they actually interact with the actual AR feature is also very telling. If you just grab 2 or 3 people and just watch them go, it's amazing what you'll find, because even that part, I've seen people, they read the instructions and the instructions couldn't be louder and clearer, where it says, scan the floor, and they're reading that out loud as they have the phone pointed up at me, and they're not even pointing at the floor as they read that out. So like it's sometimes, if you can guide the user as much as possible, that also helps that experience a great deal. But I think those are the big points of advice I would give to anyone exploring this. The benefits are there. For us, just for anyone here who's curious, like we saw, I would say between those who didn't use AR and those who did use AR on our site, the people who did engage with our AR feature, we did see they were 4 times as likely to convert. And so we did see significant conversion growth overall, the entire pie pre-post after we had launched it. So that's one of the things we're looking at, is where it is in the journey. One of the things we're exploring is how we might want to push that up even further. So right now you have to look for the product, something you're interested in. And then at that point, like most sites and retailers are doing this, where on the product page, right, you then maybe explore AR. But what if AR was a little earlier in that funnel, just a little bit? And we're testing that to see how far we can push it, where maybe that becomes a way of discovering other works. If there were maybe a carousel of related works in the AR experience, so I don't have to jump back out of the experience, but I stay there and I continue browsing and discovering products. So we're exploring different touch points and how we keep the user and where AR fits in that journey. But yeah, we're excited about some of the applications there.
Good stuff. Thank you, Wayne. Paul, so when you use WebAR for e-commerce websites, what's the kind of uplift you're seeing, and what are the things that can improve this uplift that you can actually control with the way the product is viewed or the way the interaction works?
Sure. So a couple things. We've experienced almost verbatim what Wayne has independently. With our e-com businesses, and it's everything from consumer goods to believe it or not, pet supplements. And ultimately what we came to discover was simplicity is key. If you're on the product page, you got to have your button above the fold. Everybody's got their gallery, try to get pretty much right there. What we also discovered, and again, studying the customer journey.
What do you call the button? What do you write on the buttons for people?
Whatever you're using to activate. So if it's, literally, if I'm on the landing page, be it on my computer, on my phone or tablet, if I've got a call out, view in augmented reality. We have the same thing goes onto a computer, on a desktop for a browser, view on my computer. But ultimately what you're doing is you're inviting the user to click that button. And there's a variety of techniques, and easily done through A/B testing, what the strongest ways are to get your consumer to click. But that's the goal, right? Once they've clicked, it then has to be a fairly seamless launch. And then again, the image has got to come up almost always in some form of a preview mode. And then, they're going to center, click, lock it in. And then there's all manner of user experience sort of thereafter to best lead you to click to add to cart. What I will say though, and to Wayne's point about looking at other areas to use it, and Rory, or if it's okay, we could intro Harish here. What we did is we studied where AR could fit in the customer journey. And because it was WebAR, we realized very quickly we could create the equivalent of an ARitized ad unit. And we began posting the same level of WebAR experience into that ad unit. and it was remarkable. We discovered the same increase in click-through, the same level of experience, and the same level of add to cart, circumventing the user hitting the landing page. And so, that led obviously to a fairly robust activity on our end. And, Harish, if I can introduce you, we basically heads up our AR ad network globally now.
Just go ahead and introduce him.
Yeah. Well, Harish, over to you. Tell us a little bit about what we're doing there, just to share with the community at large. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think thanks, Paul, and thanks, Zoe. So yeah, as Paul mentioned, right, I think how you do the ads and drive, like what are the touch points and how you drive traffic to your web, and using an AR ad gives consumers an experience upstream itself, like as Wayne was mentioning, right? How can you push the envelope a little upstream? And I think AR ads is a perfect medium to put those out and then have the experience, even if it's outside in a display network on various sites, and then bring the traffic in and then the experience and how you set the button to experience the product. The other thing we have seen through the AR ads as well is that how do you set the complementary products as well, right? How do you engage, right? It's not just a individual product that you do AR and keep it on your site as a web AR, but how do you complement that with either complementary products or something that goes along, right? So for example, if you are a luxury retailer selling handbags, how can you complement that with the jewelry or watches or something like that, right? So that is also key in keeping that engagement and pushing that into a more increased conversion rates as well.
Harish. So folks, we're getting to, it's actually 1 hour, but we're going to try to keep going. Hopefully all the speakers can stay for a few more minutes to answer some of the key questions from the audience. But the last segment I wanted to go through before we completely open it up is a little bit about the future of WebAR. And we're going to start again with Wayne. From your perspective, where do you want AR on the web to be in the future? What are some of the things that maybe are not possible today that you'd like to see in the future?
Yeah, so I can speak to at least within the context of what we do, of course. One of the areas, obviously, I mentioned sort of product coverage and being able to model 3D objects at scale. But someone else mentioned, we discussed earlier about LiDAR as a possible solution for that, but also LiDAR in terms of right now, for instance, the way we do it is it's one product per wall, but it would be great if we had some of our art collectors, they sort of scan their entire space and they maybe just purchased a new home. They don't know much about art and they need help. So they just sort of scan everything. And we have a sales team, advisory team that can work with them to really, decorate the entire space. So they can actually create gallery walls, multiple works across multiple walls, and maybe even furnish their entire home. So I think as a sales tool, that could be incredibly powerful for our sales staff. So that's one thing we'd love to explore. But yeah, I think there's we're pretty excited about the future, and also the idea right now with the WebAR experience, it's still early, so we want to push that a little further. So being able to build a gallery wall with multiple works or discover other things and just browse within that experience. There's some latency issues, of course, and memory issues. So that's one thing we're hoping over the next year or so that will slowly improve and hopefully allow us to be able to explore those types of applications where we can really push the limit and have people decorate and curate their entire wall with many works and use AR as a primary discovery mechanism.
Here, that's where we want to go. So since we have a futurist on the panel, let's turn to Kathy. Where is AR going on the web? And do you think we'll see at some point WebAR running on top of AR Cloud?
So what I would say is what I'm seeing is that AR in many of its different forms is becoming a full funnel medium. So what I mean by that, it's not only helping in the the brand awareness part and try to get the person into the funnel, but it's helping at purchase and then post-purchase. If you think more virtual humans and customer service, like I really think we need to start thinking when we talk to brands and when we talk to clients about it being a full funnel medium. This is extremely powerful. So I think that that's kind of where it's going. One of the things that and you ask about the AR cloud, or I reference usually the metaverse, right? But the biggest thing for me are two things related to WebAR and AR in general as it pertains to the future. Is first that if we all look around us, everything we see around us is 3D and has volume, right? So what happens obviously when we move away from this into glasses, right? All that content will need to be 3D. I'm not going to want a whole bunch of flat screens in front of me through glasses. That's usually a picture that we see. People post a picture of someone with like tons of flat screens. And it's like, why would I want that if I'm going to have this, right? So I think that's where when you see the push for 3D and for dimensional content, whether it's volumetric video or 3D, it's just a really exciting part of the equation. And we're going to want that. The consumer is going to want that too, right? So I think that is where the opportunity is. And if you think of AR in many of its different forms, as a full funnel medium and kind of the demand that we will have eventually, there's great opportunities. With that being said, when does the web as we know it on our computers end, and when does it start here? And is it eventually going to be just AR instead of web AR and app AR? Is it all just going to be AR, right? That's another thing. And then the big thing that I do want to impress on everyone here is that all of us, every single panelist here, obviously, I would guess that a lot of the participants, every single one of us here is building the printing press of the future. And I cannot stress that enough. This content that we're creating, these 3D assets that we're creating will live on, will be those, that content. I personally look at the future of museums and the future of libraries and the future of universities and think of them as these repositories of 3D content, right? What comes after the books? What comes after the flat screens? That's the future. Is this, this future where things are three-dimensional, where things are volumetric. I'm personally working with Avatar Dimension, a volumetric capture studio in DC, to create one of the world's first volumetric historical preservation programs, thinking not just about scanning people and their stories, but scanning heritage, dances, people speaking different languages that might get lost, artifacts. Obviously I'm in DC, very close to the Smithsonian, great opportunities to be able to help in those ways and preserve those stories, those memories, and even those products, right? So yeah, I think that just want to press that, we are going into a very interesting future where the work that we all do right now, we're doing it for brands, but in reality, the work we're doing is quite powerful, and we're creating that printing press of the future.
Amazing, inspiring, and definitely something to look forward to. We have a question from Rory about some numbers, some statistics. The question is, what sort of dwell or engagement time increase are brands seeing with AR versus 2D assets? So I don't know who wants to jump in.
Well, I can.
I can.
Go ahead.
I do.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Paul.
go ahead. No, you're Patrick. I've been talking all day. You go ahead if you want.
No, honestly, you know this better than anybody. Like, please,
Yeah.
Paul.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, so, we've yet to have a client who doesn't experience, so first off, there's the dwell time we talked about. So it's I guess really it's you land on the page and it's, basically the metric between, did I click or not? That's usually, more related to placement of activation. So let's just assume that's good. You'll probably find 25% or more of the people will just either out of curiosity or direct interest click on it. Once they're in, assuming it's simple and fairly frictionless, you'll find upwards to 30 seconds to, we've had some for, we've got outliers, but it's probably just, let's call them outliers, but most will be in around the 2 to 3 minute range. Again, depending on the functionality of the product and complexity, right, of the product that they're looking. What I think is most interesting though is, and there is a direct correlation to this, and it's kind of obvious, those that spend more time dwelling with your product have a much higher likelihood of clicking add to cart. In other words, converting. And, you know, once you've done that, I don't think you'll ever go back. It's kind of like the first time you tried, you know, insert whatever, fax machine, email, text message, you know, wherever you are on that, you know, Eureka curve. Once you see that conversion rate, Wayne called it out 4 times, you know, as long as the net benefit and the rationalization on the spend shows that you've got an immediate uplift, that's 4%, 4 times more revenue coming into your funnel than you had without AR. And that's kind of what we've experienced. All of our clients see that. And, you know, those are fairly consistent data points. And we're just getting started. I mean, you know, we're talking about, you know, early adopters here. We're just tipping in to the beginning of this. And I suspect that, you know, again, it will be, as Kathy says, full funnel. I think personally, it's a new mass medium that's going to come out over the next few years. Certainly the glasses are going to be the big tipping point. But you're seeing an awful lot of adoption by brands because of that. And so those are the hard metrics that we see. And, you know, I see these every day, you know, literally.
And just to add on to that, to Paul's statement there, just from an ads perspective or from an ad network perspective, right? So that, you know, add to cart conversions are significantly higher with an AR product on the web. Plus, even if the cart addition doesn't happen, the retargeting, success on retargeting is also very high, where you can take the data on the amount of time that they spent on, you know, playing around with that AR object.
Right.
Then for marketers and brand managers, the retargeting opportunity is huge. Getting that information and then targeting with additional ads or driving traffic to those specific customers is also huge in that. And then it converts into, obviously, again, adding to cart and conversion. One other thing, like as also Paul has mentioned on the Kathy also touched on it, the glasses, right? That's where I see the future, as Kathy was also talking, right? It's the whole ecosystem, or where we see becomes 3D. Because I came from Microsoft before, and now I'm at Nextech. But you know, they're one of the things that is the HoloLens that they have, which is a mixed reality glass kind of a thing, right? So those are exactly the examples and the industries, retail industries, what they are going after, right? How do we bring that kind of a AR into a real life environment, into your room, into your house? That's I think is where the future is also going to be.
Thank you, Harish. So we actually have a question about the workshop, Patrick. The question from Yanis in New York is whether we offer preview of the workshop just so that they can get an idea of what the learning experience will be like. So are you up for like a quick demonstration?
As in right now, or just thought? So if there's any questions, people can shoot me a message. I'm happy to kind of like share a little bit more depth from what's currently on the web page. I think the web page does a pretty good job kind of layering out exactly what we're going to be covering. But yeah, I'm more than happy to kind of dive into it a little bit if people want to shoot out some questions leading up to the actual event itself. I think you know, right now I feel like I'm on the spot, so I wouldn't even know where to start. It's a massive presentation, I'm telling you. It's like we've got like about just 130 slides alone, just that we're going to be working through, and that doesn't even account for the all the assignments that we're offering, the actual discussions we're doing. I mean, it's the thing is packed, and believe me, you're gonna it's for 2 hours of time. Like, I mean, that that's what we would be charging for the cost of this thing. So you guys are getting a deal.
It's about synthesizing dozens and dozens, or maybe hundreds of discussions with clients, with brands, so that, you know, you get it all kind of condensed in a way that arms you with kind of the strategy, the knowledge that you need in order to save a lot of time and money when you plan to produce a WebAR campaign. So definitely worthwhile. I think we're going to use this time to actually wrap up. We'll thank once again our amazing panel here. Thank you for Paul from Nextech AR, Patrick Johnson from Rock Paper Reality, Kathy Hackel, our futurist, Adam Wilson, Polyform Studio, And of course, Wayne Chang from Satyar. Thank you all very, very much. It's been illuminating. For those who are interested in the workshop, here's again the detail. You can just go to the URL here on the bottom, awxr.com/academy/WebAR101. Next course starts in early February. So this is the time to sign up and take advantage of the early bird. If you don't make it for this one, you can make it for the next one. There's going to be plenty all year. With that said, again, thank you all for joining us for this meetup on this special day. And can't wait to see you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ori.